Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Daily Devotional. Our Daily Devotional today is actually going to come from an article that was published on May the 28th, and there's actually been an update to this, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit. But the title of the article is Virginia Teacher Placed on Leave After Speech, Disputing Biological Boy Can Be a Girl and Vice Versa. Leesburg Elementary teacher Byron Tanner Cross described it as lying to a child. An elementary school physical education teacher in Virginia was placed on leave after an explosive speech in which he told his school board he wouldn't affirm that a biological boy can be a girl and vice versa. During a Loudoun County school board meeting Tuesday, teacher Byron Tanner Cross voiced his opposition to proposed policy surrounding gender. My name is Tanner Cross, and I'm speaking out of love for those who are suffering from gender dysphoria, Cross told the board. He went on to discuss a 60-minute special about the issue. 60 Minutes this past Sunday interviewed over 30 young people who transitioned, but they felt led astray because of lack of pushback or how easy it was to make physical changes to their bodies. They are now detransitioning, he said. It is not my intention to hurt anyone, but there are certain truths that we must face when ready. We condemn school policies that would damage children and defile the holy image of God. I love all of my students, but I will never lie to them regardless of the consequences. I'm a teacher, but I serve God first, and I will not affirm that a biological boy can be a girl and vice versa because it's against my religion. It's lying to a child, it's abuse to a child, and it's sinning against our God. Fox News obtained an email via the group Parents Against Critical Theory sent Thursday. It announced Cross's leave from Leesburg Elementary. Principal Sean Lacey told recipients, I'm contacting you to let you know that one of our physical education teachers, Tanner Cross, is on leave beginning this morning. In his absence, his duties will be covered by substitute staff and so forth. Principal basically, he says this is going to affect your routine. I'm not going to offer any more information. At this time, at the writing of the article, it's unclear why exactly Cross was put on leave, but they confirmed that Lacey sent the email. I think that was pretty much everything in this article. The news comes amid a raging debate over ideas surrounding race and gender identity in one of the nation's wealthiest counties. Cross had referred to Policy 8040, which required Loudoun staff to use preferred pronouns. This is the thing that's going around in a lot of school districts and so forth, that you have to use students given chosen gender pronoun and so forth. Staff shall allow gender-expansive or transgender students to use their chosen name and gender pronouns that reflect their gender identity without any substantiating evidence, regardless of the name and gender recorded in the student's permanent educational record. The use of gender-neutral pronouns are appropriate. Inadvertent slips of the use of names may occur. However, staff and students who intentionally and persistently refuse to respect a student's gender identity by using the wrong name and gender pronoun are in violation of this policy. So, that was the article back on May the 28th. There's been a couple updates since then, and a judge ruled that, so he actually ended up losing his job, and a judge ruled that the school district cannot fire this guy based on his belief of gender equality, and based on the fact that, the school district argued that, well, it caused a disruption on campus. The judge says, no, it didn't, and says you have to let him back. And the school district last report was going to appeal that. They said, no, we don't want him back. It was a disruption, and it is still a disruption, and so forth. But I think it's notable. I don't know what religion or church this guy goes to, but the fact that, first of all, he's willing to stand up and say, okay, this is the truth as I see it, okay, and forcing him to use pronouns that by doing so would automatically imply that he supports the chosen gender of a student. Okay, For instance, if a boy wants his teacher to call him her, if I'm a teacher and I say she or her or whatever in regards to him, then I'm kind of affirming their thought process that they are a her. And this is kind of where this teacher was at. He says, I serve God first. Even though he's a teacher, I serve God first. And I will not affirm that a biological boy can turn into a girl or vice versa. It's lying to a child, it's abuse to a child, and it's sinning against our God. And I thought that was a really, really good quote, because he's not wrong. I mean, he's not wrong. It is lying to a child. A biological boy cannot become a biological girl. You can have surgery, you can think yourself a girl, but that doesn't change anything. You're still a boy, and vice versa. You may wish you were a girl, or you may wish you were a boy, vice versa. It doesn't change anything. It says it's an abuse to a child, and it's sinning against our God. And I thought about that one for a minute, and I assume that in the process of the way that the sentence is structured here, what is lying to a child? It's telling a boy that he's a girl when he's not, okay? Or affirming that by using those preferred pronouns. And by doing so, would I be sinning if I did it? And it was something I hadn't really thought about until I read this article. And I think it probably, I'm leaning towards, yeah. I hadn't thought about it before, and it made me really kind of think about what the words that I use, they teach something. They can teach something that is godly, or they can teach something that is not godly. It can teach and support the truth, or it can teach and support lies. And it occurred to me that using certain pronouns that are contrary to objective truth, if a boy is a biological boy, that's a him, that's a he, that's a boy. You can't just lie and say that he's not. And so whether you chalk it up as if I say it's a girl, it's lying, or if I say he's a girl, I'm affirming some sort of gender transition or gender identity or whatnot, I tend to agree with him that it's lying against our God. Certainly it's lying. Okay, he's not a boy, he's a girl. But something so small, something so seemingly harmless as gender pronouns, can they be a threat to my soul? And it goes along with what he's saying. It's affirming this thought process that this boy can think himself a girl. And I tend to agree with that. He also says, there are certain truths we must face. We condemn school policies that would damage children, defy the holy image of God. I don't know what he's referencing, the holy image of God. Obviously, we're created in God's image, but I've always associated that with the soul, the spirit, that we are the only beings on earth that have a soul or spirit, just as God is spirit. I don't think God looks like a human being necessarily, but if he's referencing the innocence, the purity of children, then that could very well be what he's referencing, in which case I don't disagree. We would be damaging children, and children are the image of God in innocence and in purity. And certainly Jesus said on multiple occasions that in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, we must become like little children. And so if that's kind of where he's coming from with that, I don't disagree with that at all. I think he's absolutely right from that perspective. So it's really interesting. I don't know this guy's background. I don't know this guy's religion or whatever. But certainly, I mean, you could easily, based on what he says, just on what he says, I don't see anything here that there was anything whatsoever that's wrong. And I think that that's a great example. Whether this guy, I know there are churches in Virginia, the Churches of Christ in Virginia, whether he's a member of the Church of Christ or a member of some other Christian religion, I don't know. But having said that, there's two things that I want to take away from this. First of all is the example this guy's setting, because we have members at the Wichita Falls congregation who are teachers. I know many brethren who are teachers or have been teachers. And the fact that this is something that is permeating school districts everywhere. Okay, I don't know that it's here in Texas quite yet, but it's permeating everywhere. Preferred pronouns and so forth. It's a challenge, and if we make a decision, if we decide I'm not going to call a child by their preferred pronoun, I'm going to call them by their biological pronoun, as a teacher, we could very well be taking our job in our hands. And you wouldn't think that being a teacher would be that controversial. You wouldn't think that being a teacher, you would face challenges to your faith in that way, and that if you stand for your faith, you could lose your job. But here we are. And I think that's really interesting. In 1 Peter chapter 3, so the first thing was his example and his willingness to take his job in his hands and say, you know what, this isn't right. I serve God first. I'm not a teacher first. And I think that's an excellent point that he made, was that, yes, I'm a teacher, but I serve God first. And so whatever is important, whatever is a part of serving God, that's what's most important to me. And if that means stop being a teacher, then that's what that means. But then in 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 14 is the reminder from Peter to the saints that sometimes we're going to face persecution. He says in verse 13, "Who is he who will harm you if you become followers of what is good?" You would think, generally, you wouldn't be harmed if you do that which is good. However, that's not always going to be the case. Even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you are blessed. What did Jesus say in the Beatitudes? Blessed are those who are persecuted for my name's sake. Do not be afraid of their threats, nor be troubled. In verse 15, of course, we've talked about verse 15 in the past. Sanctify the Lord God in your hearts. Always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. We'll talk about that in a minute. Having a good conscience, that when they defame you as evildoers, those who revile your good conduct in Christ may be ashamed. For it is better, if it is the will of God, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the Spirit. And the partaking of the sufferings of Christ, that's something that Paul brings up on several occasions. Peter brings it up here. And being willing to suffer, being willing to face that trouble. In fact, going on in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 1, he's going to describe how we spend enough of our lives pursuing the things of the flesh. Instead, we commit ourselves to serving God. Part of committing ourselves to serving God is not to sin. And one who has committed themselves to serving God and not to sin will be willing to suffer for the cause of Christ. But when he says this in verse 15, the context of this is facing persecution, even more facing persecution. First of all, I set Jesus apart in my heart. That means I serve him first. And then secondly, I'm ready to tell people this is what the truth is. Whether or not it's going to bring about evil to me, whether or not it's going to bring persecution, I'm still going to speak the truth. And again, regardless of this guy's religious affiliation or denomination or whatever, at the very least, from what I can say, is at verse 15, with this particular situation, I kind of feel like he's doing that. He's serving God first, serving Jesus first, and he's willing to stand up for the truth. And so I just wanted to point that out. Even if he's not a member of the church that belongs to Christ, certainly his example is one that we should want to have ourselves. And hopefully our teachers who are currently serving in school districts in Texas and around the nation aren't facing this. But if they do, and you ask yourself, what am I supposed to do? I think you have to really consider what this fellow says and what the scriptures say, obviously, most importantly, is that you can't lie to a child. And by affirming that they are, or even implying the affirmation that they are a girl because they choose to be, even though they're a biological boy or vice versa, that's lying. And it puts you in a difficult position, and it puts you in a position where you're going to offend people. I'm sorry, but I'm going to call you a boy. I'm not telling you you're a girl. And again, you would think something so small, so little, but I think this guy's right. I think it's lying. You can't do that. All right, that's the day of the devotional for you today. Our next day of the devotional, Lord willing, will be on Thursday at 6:30. So I will hope to see you all then. Thanks, everybody.